Am I right in saying that you're the only person who's actually got a parking space right outside?
I didn't ask for it, they gave it to me.
Did you?
Yeah. Did they, you mean?
Did they, you mean? I'm going to be corrected all through this.
We had a commissionaire here who was a wonderful old chap called Sergeant Mundy, who used to be in the Household Cavalry, and he was standing outside one November night when the cinematograph exhibitors had a big function on A stage where they were shooting Cleopatra, and it was a big dinner party, and he insisted on standing outside to meet Lord Rank when he arrived. And the poor bugger got flu and died. He did two things. He was a great gardener, and he created a carnation which he called Betty Box, after my wife, and he created my parking space.
How wonderful.
He was a dear man.
Yes.
He lived in Windsor, in Arthur Road. He was succeeded here by another Household Cavalry man who was in the same squadron, who became a film extra. Since when we've had nobody.
So what got you started in the business?
Pardon?
What got you started in the business? Why did you come into the film business originally?
I was invited.
How did that happen?
Well, I'm a writer, you see. I was a script writer. I had a couple of plays on in London. One lasted a week and one lasted 10 days. The one that lasted 10 days was a comedy, so I thought I should concentrate on it. But I was writing radio plays during the war because I went into hospital on the day I was called up, believe it or not. That's bloody good timing. You would never think of it. My twin brother went in, but I went into hospital with spinal meningitis for a year. And when I came out, my brain wasn't what I thought it was, and it still isn't. And I started writing radio plays instead of 3-act plays because I couldn't concentrate. And I had a letter from Rank asking me to join Rank Religious Films to write scripts for them. I think they wanted me to gag up Jesus Christ a bit. And my first job was to be sent down to Wales to walk in the footsteps of a Russian Bible student called Jacob Varga, and I stayed with the mining family that he lived with in the Rhondda Valley. And I walked all over the Rhondda Valley, even among the rhododendrons. This is during the war. And I started working on this script. But of course, the real story of Jacob Varga was that when he got back to Russia, they shot him. This was in 1910. But I did enjoy my trip to Wales for the Rank Religious Film outfit and staying with the family. They had a very shy 14-year-old girl and she had a beautiful voice, and I asked her if she would sing "I Know That My Redeemer Liveth" for me. That's not the last bit for me is not part of the script. That's not part of the script. And she was hiding in the kitchen, but I managed to get her out. And her grandfather sat at the piano, the upright piano, which was very much out of tune. And he had no teeth. And he started singing it with her. And I think he splashed the music so much he couldn't read it. I've never seen such a sight, but she had a wonderful voice, a lovely 14-year-old girl. I've never forgotten it. And that was my first job in the film industry.
Because Rank, of course, started off mainly as a religious maker, didn't he?
That's right.
As Quaker.
That's right. He wasn't a Quaker, he was Methodist.
Methodist.
They used to say there's Methodism in his madness. And he really tried hard to get British films accepted everywhere. He even built cinemas in America. But of course you can't get shown in America unless you've got American money in it.
Even then?
Even now.
Yeah.
No matter what the government puts in, it's got to have American money or it won't be shown.
So then you started working at Pinewood?
No.
Well-researched interview, this one.
Everybody knows.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll start this one.
Everybody knows me better than I do, you know. I went back to Fleet Street when rank religious films closed down through lack of support. And also, believe it or not, because he couldn't find a stage to shoot the damn things on, although he owned all the studios. I went back to Fleet Street, which I didn't enjoy very much. I don't like poking around and interfering with people's lives. And one evening I was invited as the film editor of the paper to go to the Savoy Hotel in the gondolier suite where Sidney Box was holding a press reception for the Seventh Veil. And there I met Betty, his sister. And Sidney said to me, "You're a writer, are you?" I said, "Well, I must be, because I'm here as a journalist." And he said, "I want to make a film called Holiday Camp. Got any ideas?" I said, "I think I might have." And I sent him some stories. And he rang me up and he said, "Come and join me as a scriptwriter." So I did. I gave up Fleet Street and joined him as a scriptwriter. And my first film with him was Holiday Camp.
And what followed that?
I got married to Betty. No, I moved over to Islington, where Betty was running Islington Studios as a scriptwriter, where Norman Hudis was publicist, and Betty Callahan, a name you might remember. And when that closed down, I moved to Shepherd's Bush, Gainsborough Shepherd's Bush, still as a scriptwriter. And when that closed down, I moved to Pinewood as a scriptwriter, and I've been here
That
ever
hasn't
since.
closed down.
I've been here ever since.
Yeah. And when did you get into production? When did you start on that?
Well, I got into production because I got rather fed up with people not wanting my script, so I thought, all right, bugger it, I'll do it myself. And I did.
And what was the first one you produced?
It was a film called You Know What Sailors Are, from
From the play?
a Sylvester novel. You'll get it right in a minute.
I will. Which Peter Rogers are you?
I'm the one.
You got the one with the horse, haven't you?
I'm the one with the dog.
Oh, right.
I used to have this experience at Shepherd's Bush when there used to be fans outside of the studios, about 6 of them, I think, at most. And when I came out, they used to say, "Can I have a picture of your horse?" They thought I was Roy Rogers.
So you started producing.
Yep.
You Know What Sailors Are. Ronnie, let's just get this one right.
Your father was in it.
Oh, that's right. That's why I knew the name.
I tried to get Kenneth More. but
That was cheaper?
He just made a film called Genevieve, which the Rank organisation said is a waste of time. Let's put it on the shelf. It's no bloody good. And Earl St. John, an old pissy Texan American who used to be executive producer here, said, "No, you can't have Kenneth More, he's no good. He's in this thing called Genevieve." So Kenneth More, being a great friend, said, "All right, I'll play the second lead then, I don't mind." Earl St. John said, "No, I don't want him second lead. Not even third lead." So we had your father instead.
And what followed that? What followed You Know What Sailors Are?
What followed? You Know What Sailors Are? Bugger if I can remember.
What started the Carry On series then? Because you were saying earlier
Well,
it wasn't a series.
I had a script that nobody wanted. It was called The Bull Boys. It was written by Delderfield, who'd written quite a lot of stuff. A very good writer, actually. And it was about a couple of ballet dancers whose romance was disrupted by conscription. Leslie Caron was slated to play the part, and someone had been over to Paris to talk to her, and she said yes, she'd play it. But no distributor seemed to want it. And being in the dustbin business, it came to me. Ullage, Rogers they used to call me. Anything you don't want, throw it to him, he'll do something with it. And I said to Norman one day, you know, like the Norman Hudis that we know, why don't we turn this into a comedy? John Antropos had a go, but it didn't come off. And genius that he is, he did it. And that was Carry On Sergeant.
You said earlier that it wasn't originally a series, obviously, it was a one-off movie.
It was a romance, it was a tragedy, it was a, well, it was, the whole bloody thing was a tragedy. It very nearly was a tragedy, wasn't it, Norman? We came here from Beaconsfield Studios, where I was in charge, but I was making a television series with Roger Moore called Ivanhoe over there, so I couldn't get in. So we brought it here. Everybody said, you come to Pinewood, you'll be slaughtered. You can't make an economical picture at Pinewood. £90,000 budget, what are you talking about? 900,000 more like it. We did it for 75, actually. And I had a meeting with the labour force here, the shop stewards and so on. Bless their hearts, they said, all right, Peter, we'll help you. I said, I don't want a large labour force, I only want so many. And I don't want what they call inky lunches, which means the sparks creep back onto the floor and bugger around with the lights and charge overtime or something, which has nothing to do with you. To stop that, we locked the stage doors, actually. Never been done before. And they said, there's one condition. Rank had stopped end of picture parties, banned them. Give us a party. So I gave him a party. We had an end of picture party. As an independent, I was allowed to here. It wasn't a rank film. It was made for Anglo Amalgamated with ABC release. And from then on, with a success, we ran it one afternoon here for the people who work in Pinewood who had nothing to do in the afternoons, which was most of the studios. And they roared their heads off. They crowded into the theatre. And I said to Gerald, I think we might make another one if we're lucky. And that's how it started.
And it took off from there. Was the first one financially very successful?
Oh, don't be bloody silly. Of course it was. Otherwise I couldn't have made another one.
But I mean, beyond one's dreams of it, you'd obviously projected what you thought.
Beyond anybody's dreams. It made its money back in the first fortnight in London.
Really, the first fortnight?
In those days, you had 3 legs of London, north, south, and somewhere else. And I was on the ABC circuit. My wife was on the rank circuit. And we used to drive down to Kent to see my father, and going on Sundays and going through South London, there would be my film at the ABC and Betty's film, A Doctor, on the other side of the road. I couldn't look and see what the cues were because I was driving, but she looked, and we thought it was about equal.
What became the second?
But then, of course, I had a lot of trouble with ABC and Anglo that I was working for, because I don't do a one-picture deal. It's either 5 pictures or nothing. I mean, you've got to keep people working, you see. And my artists like to know that they've got another picture coming when this one finishes. And they said, you know, we run Elstree Studios. Why don't you make your films there? I said, I don't want to make them at Elstree Studios. I know the workforce here. I know the shop stewards. I know all the shop stewards, the sparks, the chippies, the plasterers, the riggers, everybody. I know them by name, and they know me by name, and without them, we couldn't make the pictures as we do. On schedule, under budget, and so on. So I said, if you want me to work at Elstree, you'll have to find someone else. I'm not going to make them there. So we're still here.
Have you always been an independent at Pinewood? Have you ever?
Yeah.
You always have? Kept that all along? Wow. I remember a comment you made a while ago about the Carry-Ons when somebody asked you, what did you attribute the success of the Carry-Ons to? And you said, when you drive a Rolls Royce, you don't look under the bonnet. They work. Have you revised that now, or?
No, I say about success. I've been asked by somebody just now who was doing a radio interview. I don't believe in analyzing success. Accept it. Put up with it, suffer it. Otherwise, if someone starts analysing, why did I go to see this film? Half the people, all the people in this room would say, my God, is that why I go? I'm not going anymore. Why analyse it? Accept it. I did a radio interview at the BBC with a well-known bloke and said, what is the secret of the success of the Carry-Ons? I said, I'm damned if I know. He said, well, that's the end of the interview. I walked out. And that was the end of it. But it was true. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I'm happy to see these people here. These people are responsible for my success. They've probably not seen a film in a cinema. Have you? You have? More than
very
I have.
few.
It's more than I have, because I made a point of not seeing them in a cinema. Once they left here, once they left the studios, I said to Gerald, they stand on their own feet. I'm working on the next one now. You can go and see it if you like. But I know how it's going. I feel in my belly that we're right. And I have never seen one in a cinema.
Did you ever do those tests that they do in America of giving it to certain groupings of audience to see what the result is before it's released?
Sneak previews.
Sneak previews.
Oh no, what a waste of time.
Yeah.
They used to do that with the Wisdom films here. They used to show them in Manchester and all sorts of places, bring them back to the studios because the laugh wasn't in the right place. If the laugh wasn't in the right place, the script was wrong. Wasn't it, Norman?
Because they did the same with one of the Doctor films about the line of what's the bleeding time?
No, they never sneaked a doctor.
But they had to re-edit, didn't they, because of that?
The bleeding time was always in the film.
Yes, they had to re-edit the gap afterwards. Otherwise, Dad's autobiography has a chapter completely wrong.
Gerald and I had the theory that if a laugh goes over into the next gag, they go back again to see it.
For what they missed?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they did. Let the gags overrun. Don't stop because people laugh. That's what they did again with the Wisdoms. They had gaps where they thought the laugh was, and nothing happened.
I was speaking to Jimmy Perry the other day.
Who?
And Jimmy Perry, who wrote all the Dad's Army. And I said, when did you know you had a real hit series? And he said, when it finished. Because we went one by one. He said, we never knew that it was a mega until it became classic.
You just enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
I enjoyed making the Carry-On.
All of them? Does one stand out more than another? Apart from Carry On Columbus, of course, because I was in it and that was so good.
Well, my favourite is Khyber. I think only because it has my favourite gag in, which Norman didn't write. of Bernard Breslau throws his bomb at the residency, which is Pinewood Studios, and says, that'll teach them to ban the turbans on the buses. I think it was wonderful at the time. It was wonderful at the time. It's not wonderful now, but it was then. My other favourite is Carry On Jack, which I think is pure pantomime. Alan Hume, is Alan Hume here tonight? No. No, I can talk about him then. Alan Hume started working with me as an operator, camera operator. And Ted Scaife was the cameraman. And Ted Scaife rang me one Sunday night as we were going to shoot on the Monday to say that he'd had a chance to go to Turkey for 14 weeks on location, and our picture was only 6 weeks. Would I let him go? Well, of course I couldn't stand in his way. So I rang Alan Hume, who was the operator, and I said, Alan, you're lighting tomorrow morning. And that started his career as a cameraman with me on the Bonds, now one of the highest paid cameramen in the business. And Ted Scaife's film was cancelled. So the poor bugger didn't have his 14 weeks in Turkey. In Carry On Jack, I did, for my own self-indulgence, put a little time on the schedule, because I said to Alan, just for my own in-joke, I would like you to recreate the death of Nelson on the set. It took all the morning. You know the famous painting. I said, I don't mind, I want to see it. We weren't behind schedule on the whole thing anyway, but that is my little, occasionally I have a little in-joke. We were shooting on Camber Sands there for quite a few weeks, which is quite a lot of time for me to be away on a location. But you know, before we arrived, there was an advertising unit on the Sands shooting a girl under an umbrella. And they were there when we left. Just an advertising.
Still at it, yeah.
Throwing money away.
Were there any particular incidents that stand out on the movie, or on any of them, your favourite moments or anecdotes that happened?
My favourite moments are when it starts and when it finishes. And when we start the next one.
Yeah.
In between, there's a lot of worry. But that's the job.
Obviously been very happy with them all, with the series.
Well, I've been very, very lucky to be working with people I like. Not everybody can say that. I have always been Peter to my crew and artists, bastard to some of them, mostly artists, but not crew. Barbara Windsor was never paid enough, she said, but her agent should have asked for more. I offered at one time to form what I called a commonwealth, that the artists would participate in profits, and they all turned it down. And later, some years later, Kenneth Williams was the only one who said they'd made a mistake.
Were you upset by any of the comments in the diaries? I was quite shocked when I read those.
What, in Kenneth Williams?
Yeah.
Kenneth Williams, I haven't read the diaries, but from what I can understand, he couldn't even tell the truth to himself. He was a great prevaricator. He said to me, I would be quite happy to make 2 carry-ons a year. That's all the money I want. And in his diaries, evidently, he said he hated making them, but then you can't tell. Artists are funny people, you know. You should know you're one. I don't know why people should expect them to have so much intelligence. It doesn't become them. Carry On Admiral was made by a man called Jimmy Carreras. No, it wasn't. It was made by...
It's our guest.
Hmm?
Our guest was, didn't he?
It was Renown. Who was the man who made Renown? George Minter. George Minter made Carry On Admiral, and with David Tomlinson, and it was before the Carry On Sergeant, and it was Stuart Levy of Anglo Amalgamated who said to me, "Why don't we use the title Carry On?" I said, "How can you? We've had Carry On Admiral." He said, "Don't worry, that's no problem." So we used Carry On Sergeant. Now, very soon after that, Minter complained and said, when he knew that more carry-ons were coming up, because I'd registered the titles and announced that we were making the films, and he started complaining. And the British Film Institute said, "You have no complaint because you've only made one, and Mr. Rogers is going to make 6. So we got away with it. It was a bit of sharp practice, perhaps, on the part of Anglo Amalgamated, but Stuart Levy knew what he was doing. He was a very, very astute character. A very nice person. I liked him. His partner, Nat Cohen, was a different cup of tea. It was not my cup of tea at all.
On coach number...
But excuse me, on the success of the Carry-Ons, they reissued Carry On Admiral. And all round the country, it made exactly £11,000. So the audiences knew what was a genuine Carry-On and what wasn't. And they've known ever since. And thank you people for your knowing. You're responsible. You're responsible for my success. I keep telling you that. That's why I don't mind signing autographs. My memorial is 31 carry-ons. Although I've made 100 pictures, actually 100, films and television, I will only be known for 31 carry-ons, and perhaps not all 31.
Is there one movie that stands out, whether it be the Carry-Ons or any of the others, that stands out as one you absolutely adored and it all fell into place?
Well, that I made?
Yeah.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that. No. I made a film from a Wyndham story called Quest, which was a very nice film. Joan Collins was in it, and it was a very nice film. It was a very good subject about a man who, you might say, goes into the loo, comes out and can't remember anything. It wasn't amnesia, but he's always in another world. And I liked it because I wrote the music for it.
Do you?
Well, I wrote the title music.
Yeah.
There were carry-on scripts which we didn't make, some of which were written by Norman Hudis. And I think it was only because the cast had got so established. Although a writer used to say to me, "You want me to write for Hattie or somebody?" I said, "No, don't write for artists. Write the story and we'll cast it, so you don't have to worry about that." But there came a time when, for instance, Paul Tolly Rothwell, I think we worked him to death. His scripts were coming out with the same gags time and time again. That didn't matter very much because audiences, I think, have gaps of 7 years. You have a child of 7, because you remember Norman used to write the scripts with the U certificate, which was family only, no A. I had to fight the distributors to get an A. And that became a bit adult, and the censor began to get difficult. So we had to barter with him. We used to put in gags that we knew he would take out so we could keep some of our favorites in. But there were very few instances where a carry-on was not made. We avoided We avoided, we had a thing from Michael Pertwee, Carry On Flying. And I said to Gerald, it's a very good script, but I don't want to make a film about flying in case we go out on release with a nasty accident. Bob Monkhouse wrote a script, well, he said he did, Carry On Spaceman, and for the same reason, I said, I'm frightened in case there's a tragedy. The same with the Fire Brigade. I know Will Hay made a very good comedy about firemen. But I was frightened if we went out on release, there'd be a terrible fire somewhere with people hurt. I would never touch a script about anybody who stuttered or had any affliction. Be quiet, Johnny, I'm not talking to you. I think she wants to go back in the car. I'll put her in the car, but I won't be 5 seconds, believe me.
Did you target, when you released the film, did you target a certain age of the audience or a certain percentage of the people that you would reach by the carry-ons, or did you just make it a mass appeal to as many people who wanted to watch them?
No. I regard myself as a common, real person, and as such, I think I know what people like. That's your job, for God's sake, in this business. An awful lot of people in this business think I'm going to make a film that I want to make. Not what people want to see, what they want to make. It's very arrogant. Very arrogant. You don't make people say, did I intend to make a series? I didn't intend to make a series. It happened. If you go out to make a series, you're very fond of yourself. On the success of the first one, we made the second one. On the success of the second one, we made the third one. And so it went on.
Any more? There was another hand over there. Yep, at the back.
Could you please explain what is the actual role of producer, and also explain the difference between producer and executive producer, which you were on Columbus?
The executive producer doesn't do as much work as the producer. The producer is the person, forget the idea of the producer being a cigar-smoking mogul or something, forget that. The producer, if he's a working producer like me, he finds the script, he thinks of the subject, finds the script, finds the finance, engages the director, and does all the work except shoot the film. If you ever remember a circus, Bertram Mills Circus, I used to call Gerald the ringmaster, and I was Bertram Mills. That's the difference. I set it all up, and watch it, and control it, and watch the rushes, and watch the editing. He doesn't cut a foot of the film without my permission. We used to sit in the theatre holding hands. And when I wanted to cut, I used to squeeze his hand. When he wanted to cut, he squeezed mine. Now, he was a brilliant editor. He edited my wife's pictures, the Doctor series. He edited those. Gerald was a brilliant editor. In fact, when we'd finished Nurse, he rang me one Sunday night and said, you know, the film ends with Terence Longdon and Shirley Eaton going out of the front door, and the music surges up and it's all happy ever after. He said, what would it be like if we ended on the daffodil up Wilfrid Hyde White's arse? I said, it'll go out with a bang, and that's what we did. And that's the sort of editor he was. He was a brilliant editor. We ended up with too much film, and of course we had to cut. And a lovely artist called Eleanor Summerfield, I think, who was in nearly every carry-on we made, but always ended up on the cutting room floor. Poor soul. She was a wonderful artist, but she was always on the floor. With her legs crossed. Oh, I came down here to answer somebody's question. What? Well, you don't seem to be asking many questions. I'll have to go home and get some bread and cheese.
When you were younger, as a child,
When I was what?
when you were younger, growing up,
Yeah.
what made you laugh? What inspired
What made me
you?
laugh?
Was it the black and white comedians, or like Chaplin, or anything like that?
No, I don't suppose you'll remember. But there were two publications that we always had at home. One was Punch, and the other one was a comic called Chips, which had Weary Willie and Tired Tim and Casey Court, where mangling was done. And they were the two extremes of humour. Punch, slightly erudite, and Chips, which is my humour. Now, I do enjoy Punch, and I do enjoy Chips. And that's the extent of my humour. It's basic, broad. In fact, John Davis used to say to my wife when we were invited to rather fancy parties at South Street, which was the headquarters of the Rank organisation, at dinner parties and so on, anyone guaranteed to break down a party was Peter Rogers. As opposed to that one fancy party at South Street, they had invited over from France Madame Eidseek of the Champagne family. And I don't know if you know about French people, but French people never let their best wines out of France. But she came over with her own, with red labels, not gold, red labels on the top. And I was sitting next to her, and I'm not very good at conversation and small talk at tables. And I happened to say to her, "Where is your son playing at the moment?" Now, her son was Eric Eidseek, who was a brilliant pianist. And I had a recording of his recording of the Forêt Nocturnes. And she said, "How do you know that?" I said, "Well, he's a very handsome boy. My God, he's a handsome boy." I said, "Well, I got it in Paris when I was over there last." And she said, "Well, fancy an Englishman knowing about Eric Eidseek and his nocturnes." She said, as a matter of fact, he's touring Europe with his sister playing Bartok duets at the moment. So we had a rapport immediately. And all the rest of the people around the table, when they were talking about stocks and shares and what do you do? Sodom. That's what I say. We are real people in the carry-ons, and we have real audiences, and our comedy is real, and it's basic, and it's broad, and it's understandable. And it's pantomime, and sometimes it's knockabout, which is bloody good, I think. We decided to make compilations of all the things we'd done. The first compilation we did, of course, was That's Carry On, which I don't mind telling you I pinched from MGM because they did a film called That's Entertainment, you remember? With all their artists, Clark Gable and Christ knows who. So we made a feature compilation of That's Carry On. And after that, we started making compilations for the BBC and Thames and people, but they took 9 months to make. And had to be dubbed again, and it was I think Gerald used to see miles and miles of film in the cutting room. All of the films. And that's why there was the big gap. And then, when Columbus came along, a man called John Goldstone said he'd got American backing for this celebration of Columbus discovering America, which was the biggest mistake in his life. And there were 3 Columbus films made, you remember, celebrating this centenary, whatever it was. He wasn't a funny man, and although Dave Freeman did the script, I kept saying to Gerald and to John Goldstone, it is not funny, or it's not funny enough. But that was the last one.
Would you still be in the market for another Carry On?
Pardon?
If a good enough script appeared again?
I would do another one, yes, I would do another one. There are artists about. There are plenty of artists about to make another Carry On.
Are there any artists that stand out in your mind nowadays that not fill the shoes, but could hold the Carry On?
I don't think I should mention them, though. I don't think it's fair to them. Because someone will say, my God, he talked about you being in a Carry On. Alec Guinness wanted to be in one. John Gielgud wanted to be in one, but they never would. They always said they'd like to, but they never would. Laurence Olivier said he'd like to be in one. Sid James was, I suppose you could say he was our anchor man in a way. But you see, we would never, I would never allow an artist to go above a title. Because once you get an artist above a title, he thinks he's a star. And we did not want stars in carry-ons. We wanted a team of people, which we had. And by keeping them under the title, that created the team. I think you'll agree with that, Valerie. We did it all the way through. I wouldn't have one above the title, not at all.
Would the early Carry-Ons have been more successful had they been shot in colour?
No. 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 I had to fight to get colour, incidentally, but because in those days it was regarded as being very expensive. But that's shown today, so it doesn't make any difference. And there's quite an interesting cult today for black and white films anyway. We were in a bit of trouble with, which was the film where we had Marcus and Spencer's. That was Cleo, wasn't it?
Cleo. Is that right, Morris?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When one of the critics, being very kind, got in touch with Marks and Spencer's and said that we were using their colours, which was green and gold or something, and using the name Marcus and Spencer's. And the thieves got on to me. It was the man from the Express, actually. I thought he was being very kind. Wanted to cause trouble, of course. And I went to see them and I said, well, I don't know what you want me to do. This is a comedy. It's not hurting anybody. And they said, well, perhaps you would like to write a letter to the Express explaining that you don't intend any harm to Marks and Spencer. Well, I'll do that with pleasure. Next thing I know, they ring me up and say, don't bother, we don't need a letter. And now you know what's happened to Marks and Spencer.
I think this is unique. I never imagined this chat with Peter would go like this. It's been fantastic.
They finished out. I thought we were going on till 11 o'clock.
No, you are. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please say thank you to the great producer of all the Carry-On?